Got it. Okay, how about now? What are you seeing, working mode or presentation mode?
Working mode.
That's, yeah, it keeps kicking me out.
That's okay. I think do you want to try to proceed just with this?
The trouble is we are seeing one thing on the big screen. In the big screen in the room, we see presentation mode.
No.
How
Yeah.
can we tell which it is? How
Yeah,
can we
well,
tell from here?
presentation mode, all you would be seeing right now is a picture of the town of Berlin with the title of the first page. You wouldn't see any of the PowerPoint controls or slides on the left.
Yeah, we see the PowerPoint controls.
Yeah. Okay. So I think where I need to turn off my screen, I think then go with second screen only. Trouble is I can't really read it. I don't have my glasses. I can't read it.
You can
I've got a
read, you
sinus
can read
thing
the
where
screen,
I've got whatever.
Francisco, you know,
All right, well,
in
we
the
have hard
pres- in
okay. We have hard copies I can read from, so problem solved.
Oh, jeez.
Okay.
Ask the bishop for a pair of readers.
All right. Yeah, it's, if I weren't so stubborn, I would travel with my glasses.
Yeah.
I think we could make it work the way it was. Oh,
Yeah.
now it's
Yep.
all out of whack.
All right, there you go. It's back.
Okay, are you seeing the full screen now?
Now,
Now
Yes.
I am.
Okay, well,
Yes.
that's good. All right, so we have it up on our big screen. I just can't get that to duplicate on my laptop, but I have the hard copy in front of me, so I'll be able to read.
Or have one of those fine gentlemen read for you.
All right, so that being said, our agenda this evening is to review both transportation resources and needs and infrastructure as related to both transportation and your water services infrastructure. We'll talk about our subject or our agenda for next month's meeting. It kind of builds upon infrastructure in that next month we'll take a look at more facilities, that would be buildings and parks and that sort of thing. But this is really a heavy infrastructure part. And then we'll discuss our survey continues to take shape. We hope to launch it soon. We have some ideas about outreach we want to review with you. We want to let you know where the affordable housing plan stands. So we'll talk about that before talking about our next steps moving towards next month's meeting, or as I should say, later this month's meeting, because our next meeting is later this May.
Mhm.
All right, I'd like to start with a brief overview, and all of your beautiful faces are just right in the way of the title of our chart. So
Oh,
I'll just
okay.
raise you up just a little bit.
That's fine.
Okay. So let's talk about transportation, because it really, it demonstrates to us what your needs are with respect to the infrastructure that you need to provide your residents. And one of the first places we go to take a look at transportation to get a sense as to what kind of community you are would be census data and journey to work data. And what we see in looking at that data is that Berlin, and this should probably come as no surprise because you really are kind of a suburban rural community. Berlin is heavily dependent upon driving alone to commute to work, more so than Hartford County or the state. And with 84% of people in town commuting to work by driving alone. However, 8% of people work from home. This was census data from 2020, and those numbers were up by a few percentage points over the 2019 American Communities Survey data. It's picking up the shift towards working from home related to COVID. So I think there's kind of a silver lining in there, in that more people have the flexibility to work from home, which could mean a little less traffic on your roads and just more flexibility with where to live. So that's a positive indicator, I think. One of the things we like to do is take a look at how traffic volume in a community has changed over time, because in almost every community in which we work, what we hear from them is that, traffic's worse than it's ever been. We know traffic changes in its behavior. It can be worse during certain peak hours. Maybe certain roads or intersections get worse. But we really wanted to understand, is traffic growing across the town, making it just worse everywhere all the time? And what we found, and I have to say these are very similar trends to what we found in other communities, is that traffic has actually declined slightly over the last 10 plus years. It peaked in around 2013 and then dropped off a little. And then we've seen some pandemic related drop-offs in 2020 and 2021. So let me explain what this is measuring, what it is not measuring. Connecticut DOT collects traffic data on an every 2-3 year basis. And they have a number of stations they locate across town, mostly on their state highways, but on some local roads. And they do that over a period of several years. Some stations they've maybe only sampled within the last few years. Some maybe they skipped a year for some strange reason. So what we did is we took a look around town, and we really wanted to count all the stations leading into town at kind of the periphery of town. And so the 15 locations that we collected data for are points at which traffic is both driving in and driving out of town. And the DOT collects what's called average annualized daily traffic, or AADT. In which case they put some counters out, they count all the trips within a 72-hour period. They average it, they correct it for some seasonal factors, which gives you your annual average. And so based upon DOT's numbers, which is they have a very thorough, strict protocol, they generally count the same time of year, and if there are any differences in that, they correct for that. Based upon their numbers, which are very good, what we see is traffic's actually down in Berlin over the past several years as a whole, which doesn't mean it's certain intersections or locations aren't worse than they were before. It just means that total trips coming in and out of town appear to be down. So that being said, I'm going to take a break, and now it's your turn to tell me that we got it wrong. We somehow added up the data correctly, or we put the dates on backwards. So let me open it up. Does that ring true to you? Are you absolutely shocked by this information?
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised to hear that.
Okay.
Just driving the streets, it seems like. Yeah.
Yeah, you folks are surprised. How about people on Zoom? Does this surprise you?
It does. I know, I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but it surely does, because it always seems that there's more traffic on the turnpike, more traffic in town on Farmington Avenue. And it seems to be growing, and I just always figured it was going to be more traffic because of all the building development and stuff.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, Joan.
no, that's okay. I was pretty much done.
Seeing as the points where they collect data from are on the outskirts of town, in and out, could the traffic that we're seeing be from build up within Berlin, and that people aren't leaving, and there's just more cars and people being active in town?
That could be part of it, that you have just more smaller trips internally, like little short trips. That could definitely be part of it. But in terms of general commuting in and out, flows in and out of town, it's down. Like I said, there could be intersections and corridors within town that in fact do have more traffic now. But on a whole, your road network isn't being overloaded by more traffic than it was before.
Probably because our town's getting older in age. They don't drive as much.
That's part of it. That is absolutely part of it.
Or we drive more.
Well, I think that the point that was just made is a very good one, because when you're retired, you're not commuting on a daily basis. And that is a large share of trips. Even if you're driving more around town for little trips, you're not necessarily replacing all of those commuting trips and everything related, all the other trips you were making when you were not retired. So that could be a very big factor. I think that likely explains some of it. The way people are working is changing a little bit. That dip at the end is COVID related. So don't, I expect that will return back to up to normal, probably to 2015 levels, probably already. So if you're thinking I'm looking around today or last week and traffic's as bad as ever, it may be that we fully recovered from COVID, so we're back at 2015 levels.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of businesses out there that have gone remote work and have stayed remote work for a larger part. In other words, they may not be going to the office 5 days a week, maybe only 2, or they go into the office every other week.
Right.
So I think that you have that there. Plus, I think a large part of the traffic coming down, so to speak, when you think about it, a lot of people don't go out shopping anymore. Everything, a large part is done online because the stores don't have the merchandise. Case in point, I just went to a bridal shower. 4 of the women sitting at the bridal shower all bought dress online.
Sure.
Because they say they go to the store, there's nothing there. So they've given up
Right.
shopping at the malls. And I think there's been some talk about the Meriden Square closing, and I guess West Farms Mall is now in big trouble.
Yeah.
So it's amazing what you learn at bridal showers,
Yeah. That's another plausible scenario. Is Amazon's doing the driving for us.
Yeah. Buying stuff online.
So I
But
think,
anyway,
so what's the purpose of understanding these trends? And I think it's to help us understand what our priorities are going to be in terms of investing in your transportation infrastructure going forward. And it may be that you need to be a little less concerned about widening roadways. And maybe it's just dealing with acute areas of traffic congestion. So getting the signals modernized and working properly at particular intersections and relieving some points of pressure within the system. But I think as a whole, your roadway network will likely continue to have the capacity in the near future to serve you well. And you should likely be investing your resources in places other than road widening to accommodate some sort of growth that isn't there.
yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, well, let's take a look at that infrastructure. Every town and city has a roadway infrastructure that's classified by the DOT and by federal highways in something called a functional classification system. And that system is comprised of highways, arterials, principal and minor, and collector roadways. And those roadways all have a slightly different function or expectation with respect to the type of traffic they should carry, the number of vehicles, the type of investment, the level of state or federal funding that might get passed through them, their eligibility for grant funding for improvements and all that sort of thing, bridge improvements. And so that we're looking at your system on the map. Many of those roads we're looking at, particularly the principal arterials, minor arterials, and of course the highway being Route 9, are state highways. So the state is doing most of the maintenance on those corridors. And then you have a number of minor arterials and collectors, and some of your collectors are town roadways. So your big corridors are really being managed, maintained by the state, which means you don't have a lot of control over them. It also means that your town tax dollars don't have to carry the weight of improving and maintaining those roadways. However, most of your mileage of roadway is town roadway because you have so many local town roads and some collector roads. So let's get into the numbers on that. In total, the town has 142 miles of both state and local roadways and highways. 32 of those miles are state highways with 110 local highways. So most local roadways. So most are local roadways. One of the things that we like to do is measure that per capita. It gives us a sense as to how leveraged the individual person is within any community with respect to the share of their taxes that need to maintain roadways. And what we find is in your more suburban, rural type communities, there's often each person is responsible for a much greater share of roadway, just simply because there are fewer people and there's a lot of roadway. So what we see in Berlin is that there's each of you in this room is responsible, including your kids and your spouse, is responsible for 29 feet of roadway, right? You need to pay the bills on plowing that, sweeping it, resurfacing it, rebuilding it. And that equates to, per mile, you have another 180 people will share the responsibility of maintaining that mile of roadway. Now, to give you a sense as to how you measure up, that is, you by living in Berlin, you are responsible for more roadway than in the county as a whole, which is 21, average of 21 feet per person in Hartford County and 26 per person in Connecticut. And then when you take a look at residents per mile of roadway, it's 181 in Berlin compared to 250 in Hartford County and 207 in Connecticut. So all this means that a decent share of your tax dollars every year really need to be expended on roadways to help you to maintain those roadways and provide the services you need to keep those roadways functioning for you. Now, how could you reduce this load that you are carrying? Well, there are two options. Let me put a third option in. One option would be to be very successful in obtaining grants to get the state to help you. That's one option. And to some extent, the town has had some success with that. The next option is to get rid of local roadway, which no community's really going to do. You're not going to just tear up roads and get rid of them or convert them back to private. Which gets you thinking along the lines of, do we really want to, how much roadway do we want to keep adopting as town roadway? We might want to be very selective. And then the other option is get more people, right? Grow your population. So you have more tax-paying residents holding property that has value that can be taxed. Grow your commercial base. Do what you can to increase your tax base to help offset the costs. So that those are your options in front of you. But we're going to talk in a minute about some of the challenges of not having a lot of people per capita or not having a lot of people per mile of roadway. Fortunately, the town has been very successful with its commercial tax base, which helps to offset the cost and the burden carried by residents because businesses in town are sharing some of that responsibility. All right, next slide. So paving. The town has been averaging or will be averaging a little over 3 miles of road repaving per year over the past 2 years. That takes 2021 and 2022 together. You average them out, you get 3.17. It's a little more than a 5K. This is 2.9% of the town's local road network. So 2.9%. Now, if you take 100% and you divide it by 2.9, is anyone good at math? That's something like 33. So that means right now you're on pace to replace roads, resurface roads once every 33 years. Is anyone under the impression that a road will last 33 years? No. Okay. So the pace needs to be increased. The town, and I've spoken with DPW director, they know they need to be at 6 to 7 miles per year so that you can cut that 33 in half, get it down to more like 15, 16, which you can get away with on a low traffic road. You can't get away with it on your high traffic roads that have a lot of truck traffic, but that allows you to spend a little more money on and focus a little more on the heavy traffic roads, and you can stretch out some of the local roads. So they know they're behind, they're ramping up. You can see there's a big bump from 2021, only 1.25 got done, and that was because a couple of roads weren't ready to go. And this year they're up to 5. However, a lot of the financing for resurfacing in recent years has come from state grants, and there's been no town bonding. So you've been relying on state grants. So I think if there's anything we want to, we probably want to encourage, reinforce within the POCD is that the town really needs a sustainable revenue source so that DPW can get done the miles of roadway they need to get done with. And you really shouldn't be relying upon state grants. You probably should continue to get state grants to allow you to do more and get ahead of things. But the town really should commit to 6 to 7 miles a year in order to keep up with things. Now DPW is being very proactive about this. They've engaged a consultant to help to conduct a townwide pavement conditions assessment. And basically it's a high-tech operation. They go out with cars, they scan the road so they can actually rate the condition of the road with technology and give the town basically advice on how they can lengthen the lifespan of certain roads with things like crack filling, crack sealing, and what they should do in other areas, which roads are the most pressing need. So the town's doing their part to plan for this, but they're going to need a regular sustainable revenue source and dedicated funds to stay on top of this. Now, one of the corridors most in need, it's not a town roadway, it's a state roadway, and this is according to the 2019 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, is Route 71. If there's anything we want to do in the POCD is to reference the fact that the Metropolitan Transportation Plan identified that corridor as needing substantial rehabilitation, and getting in our POCD so that we can remind the state DOT that this is a priority, and the state doesn't defer work on that any more than they need to.
They're doing that now. They're working on it now.
Have they started work on it?
Yes.
Okay, all right, then we will. Good. One thing done already. We will support it. Thank you.
All the way to the Meriden line.
Good. Okay, great. Thanks for letting me know about that. Bridges. The town's done a very good job with staying on top of bridges. There are a number of recent bridge projects. And once again, like the roadways, you have both town and state-owned bridges here in Berlin. And many of them, that the map is a little hard to read. All those pinpoints show both state and town bridges. And this is from the National Bridge Inventory, which actually doesn't count some of the smaller bridge culverts, doesn't count anything less than a 20-foot span. So a lot of structures in town, very important to maintain these and there's been a lot of work done recently. In total, 37 local bridge and culverts, 15 of which are on the National Bridge Inventory. Conditions range from good to poor. A poor condition doesn't mean it's going to fall down. It just means it needs attention. As I mentioned, there are 4 projects that have been recently completed under the Federal Bridge Preservation Program, which basically means a lot of federal and pass through the state funding through local bridge programs. Another project in design under the LOTSIP, which is Local Transportation Capital Improvements Program run by state DOT. So these things are getting done. That's very good. Everything is moving in the right direction. And I think we just want to, in the POCD, we want to document the success that towns had and support the DPW in maintaining a focus on staying on top of these. But I think in very good shape in terms of staying on top of your bridge infrastructure here in Berlin. Recent example, a new bridge on High Street replaced, and Spruce Brook Road that was 75% complete. It's currently being permitted, so that'll happen soon. Edgewood Road as well. And the town's also is working with the consultant to evaluate the condition of other bridges and set priorities for bridge maintenance and replacement.
That's High Road.
High Road, not High Street. High Road. Is that correct? High Road, not street?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I will correct that.
I have a question, and it's maybe
Yeah.
more
Go ahead,
because
Donna.
of a bridge that was recently done in our neighborhood is, I'm guessing, checked off as being recently completed. But yet there was work that.
Let me go back. Which one would that be?
So that would be Park Drive.
Park Drive,
And
okay.
I know that the state, I know that the town received state money for the redo of that bridge.
Okay,
I'm not seeing it here, but the road was supposed to receive a final coat that never happened.
oh, I see.
I'm wondering if there are other similar projects that are checked off as being complete that really aren't.
I see. Yeah, it's not showing up here because these are just the National Bridge Inventory ones. When the town is done with their bridge story, their bridge study, they'll be able to give us the full list that include those smaller bridges, such as the one on Park Drive. I would need to follow up on DPW to see, what the issue there is in terms of the final resurfacing. It's my understanding the rest of these projects, if they are stated as complete, they are complete. Okay. Any other questions, comments regarding bridges in town, bridge work? All right. Well, let's talk about sidewalks. Okay, you have a sidewalk network. That's the network shown in blue, and in total, you have what we measure to be approximately 89 miles of sidewalk. This means that approximately 27% of your road edge has a sidewalk on it, right? If you're looking at the edge of the road, there's a 27% chance on any given road it'll have a sidewalk. So you have a substantial amount of network with 89 miles. However, there are clearly areas that are not served by sidewalks, and there's a lot of gaps in that network. So I think most of the work to be done strategically is to close those gaps to better connect the network. And the town has actively been doing that. A lot of that work has been happening in and around Kensington Center. And I think one of the things we'll want to do within the POCD is take a look at other areas in which roads would really provide the most strategic connections so that we can provide some recommendations for future work. It's great to have network out in a subdivision that was built and the developer put it in. But if that network can't get you down to a park or a school, it's not completely servicing the residents that live there. So there's some real opportunities here to connect the gaps and improve this system. On an annual basis, the town spends $125,000 on maintaining sidewalks. And when I say maintaining, I mean replacing cracked, broken, heaved sections. You're fortunate here in Berlin because the town carries that responsibility. If you lived in Hartford, where I own a home, I, as the homeowner, am responsible for replacing the sidewalk in front of my house when it's bad. However, that means that the town has to finance these things, right? It's not going to get a homeowner to replace a sidewalk by sending any sort of notice to their home. So 100 to 125,000 is not a lot of money. But once again, when you have a lot of miles of road that you have to repave and you're don't quite have the funding or you're a little behind on the mileage in that, it's hard to throw a lot more money at sidewalks. Fortunately, there's some good state money through the DOT, and the town's been successful in getting some of those grants around Kensington Center to help them pay for and build out sidewalks. And I would expect that in the future, that's exactly where you should look to help with that. And I expect that there will continue to be state funding available for such, because the state has really been, over the past decade, very invested in improving pedestrian connectivity in all the communities across Connecticut. All right, and
just to mention that we do have a sidewalk project ready to bid now. So hopefully we'll be bidding that shortly. And there's, some, again, filling some of these gaps like Farmington Avenue, Four Rod Road, Norton Road, Langdon Court, Newton Street. So there's a lot of gaps to fill, but, we're kind of trying to systematically work at it. So this will be good progress if we can get it all done within the budget that we have of state grants. We have a couple state grants.
And as you can see here, zooming in a little on Kensington Center, just to give you an idea. Looking at Kensington Road, which is the kind of the spine of this running north-south, you might be able to see the label on Kensington Road. You could imagine if you could extend that sidewalk further south and you get to all the rest of those sidewalks that are in the neighborhoods further south, how much that would do to improve access to Kensington Center for people that maybe don't own a vehicle and need to make a trip, whether they don't own a vehicle because they can't afford one, or because they're 15 years old and they can't drive, or because they want to walk to be healthy. Whatever the reason, that it would provide a lot of value to residents to be able to expand down some of these major corridors and connect to networks that are really already there. It's just a matter of reaching out to them. Okay. All right, so let's talk about bikes. You're a lot further behind in bikes, like most suburban or rural communities across Connecticut. You have cyclists. Most of them are recreational. Some people are riding their bikes to get around, to get to work or school or practice or whatever it may be. You have some roads that are perfectly fine for biking in the road along with traffic, because traffic's light or slow. And you have other roads that are really, really challenging. And of course, we live in New England, and we have roads, many of which really preceded the automobiles. So the rights of way are narrow, and it's not easy just to widen out a road to carve out some more room for cyclists. So this is work that Jim was very involved with a few years ago, identifying, in fact, he made this map, identifying which corridors are, and I love his categories here because they include least and less bike friendly and also possible bike route in blue. And so I think we want to have a conversation around what could the town do to better accommodate demand for cycling that's there, whether it's someone that's riding recreationally or riding to get to school or to a job. And obviously we're going to have to look at solutions that aren't millions of dollars because there's a little state money there, but not that much. And we know that sidewalks are a real priority because they serve more people, and you need to stay on top of your paving. So I think we'll have to get a little creative about this, and it may be that we recommend or build upon what Jim's done here by really identifying ways that people can safely get across town on which roads to take, and whether that means putting up some signage like bike-friendly route or producing some maps to hand out. There's some things that could be done in this area, and also pursuing some state grants to help you put up signage or do pavement markings, or maybe even do a bike study, a more in-depth bike plan that identifies some routes where you could potentially install bike lanes. And taking a look at the state, and this is a project that my firm worked on. The state has identified regional bike routes really across the state that are preferred for accommodating bike traffic based upon their being able to connect strategic locations like open space, town centers. A lot of these routes were identified by recreational cyclists as places they would love to be able to ride if they were made more comfortable or safe. And so within Berlin, these include Christian Lane, Deming Road, routes 372 and 71, which right now probably aren't very friendly routes. However, because they are in the statewide bike network, if you were to try to make some improvements along these corridors that would improve conditions for cyclists, there's a good chance you could get some state aid or state grants to do so. By example, there's some work going on right now up along Deming Road, Christian Lane area. Jim, what's the name of the road? It's escaping me right now that they're actually putting the bike lanes on.
Yeah, Episcopal and Raleigh, they're
Episcopal,
doing a design plan on now, so they're incorporating our first bike lane into that plan.
Right. So that's coming your way. So it would be a foray into bike accommodations.
So does that mean that they intend to widen the road to accommodate the bike lane, or are they going to claim a piece of the existing for the
Yeah,
bike
they're
lane?
just restriping. There was enough curb to curb width there,
Mhm.
and it was just a matter of striping it properly to carve out some room for cyclists and do some pavement marking and signage as well.
Okay.
And that's where our firm does quite a bit of this work. That's where most of the opportunities are for accommodating bikes. It's taking a look at where you have room, where you just need to provide, maybe move the shoulder stripe a little bit to provide extra space. Put up some signage, some pavement markings, maybe some intersection treatments to make it safer to cross an intersection.
Mhm.
Very rarely are you really rebuilding a road and moving curbs and widening for bikes, because it's hard to justify that kind of expenditure when you have 20, maybe 10 or 20 cyclists a day you're accommodating. It provides a tremendous amount of value to those cyclists that are using it. Improves their safety, but it can be very hard to to justify that kind of investment when we know the numbers are going to be low. It's incredibly important to those users, but we know the numbers are low.
I'm surprised to hear about Christian Lane and Deming and Municipal. I mean, just from like, that's an industrial area in our town.
Yeah.
So much truck traffic. And there's
Yeah,
also known for a lot of accidents.
Yeah.
I can see having bikers there being a recipe for disaster.
So the part of the improvements that are occurring now are address safety issues.
Yeah.
And the bike lanes are on Episcopal and approaching Deming. I think most of the improvements are on Episcopal. It's not on Christian down that area, but it's not actually.
Raleigh also going into Newington.
Right. With respect to bike accommodations, the general approach in planning is to build them out where you can. And to basically, wherever you can, you're doing a project, if there's room, you don't have to spend a lot of money. It's just a matter of carving out a little space for cyclists by putting the stripe in the right spot, carve it out. And so that's generally the approach. Like, to your point, like, why start there? It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense because the opportunity was there. There was some money, there was enough room on the road.
I know that, like, probably statistically speaking, there's enough room, but I see the way people drive on those.
Yeah.
There's so much backlog, everyone's driving crazy.
It's tough. And what we're not going to get into today, because we're saving it for next month, is bike paths and trails and greenways, which I think is a lot more promising here in Berlin, because you get people away from traffic. It will, for people that want to ride recreationally, it'll accommodate those trips. In some cases, paths and trails can also handle people that were trying to get somewhere in town. You know, if it's in the right place, it can handle those, you know, more functional trips.
Yeah.
And so I think in Berlin, there's probably a lot more promise in that area. We're going to talk about that later this month, because that really gets more into recreational facilities and parks. And so I think within the POCD, we're probably going to see more promise for greenways and trails and paths.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
As Diane knows, I like to ride by her house. That's where it's friendly.
There you go.
Most of the time.
Right.
Okay.
In my town, we added several areas where we have new pavement markings for shared roadways. So
Yeah.
it took a little getting used to as far as what does this mean? A lot of people were asking that question. Why is there suddenly a bike symbol in the middle of the road? But I think it has created the atmosphere for those roads, cognizance that bikes are using the roads too.
Thanks for bringing that up, Maureen. So what Maureen was describing is called a shared roadway, or a SHARO. You may have seen it. There's just like, it looks like a bike symbol right in the middle of the traffic lane.
Yeah.
You know, what's that doing there? And admittedly, the state probably needs to do a lot more education around what is this? How am I supposed to understand this? Sometimes it's accompanied by signage that might say share the road, or some sort of symbol indicating that. That can be a useful tool in the toolbox. Unfortunately, it's very often misapplied, meaning it's put on roads where the traffic volumes and speeds are just way too high for that to be a very effective or safe tool. But looking at the map that Jim put together here, a lot of those blue routes, you know, he's identified these are pretty safe places to bike. So these would be candidates for shared roadway markings. And you really need to think of the shared roadway markings as not really like a facility, like it's a bike lane and it's for bikes alone to use, but really as a wayfinding and educational component. It helps let bicyclists know, hey, you know, ride on this corridor because there's not a lot of traffic here, the speeds are a little lower, and this is probably a good place for you to be. And at the same time, it helps try to communicate to motorists that, you know, bikes are expected on this road, they belong here, so, you know, be sure to be friendly to them, that sort of thing. So that's the role of the SHARO. And it could be a good solution here if applied correctly. And it's very low cost, right? Some signs and paint.
Francisco, just because I know you're going to try to save this toward the end of the month, but my question is this, I'm looking at your map here. Has the state given any thought of making the Chamberlain Highway a bike-friendly route? Because it seems like we have all these blue lines all over the place, but the one major one, the green line, that would be, I mean, if they could have a bike lane on the Chamberlain Highway. I know they're tearing it up now, so who knows?
So I know that it's a narrow corridor, so it would be very challenging. I think this may speak to the need to really recommend that the town do a plan on how to accommodate bikes in town, and that you don't necessarily need to spend town money on that. You can very likely get CROG to do it for you, or you can get a grant to do that plan. And that plan would allow really a consultant, our firm does a lot of this work with communities, to go out, inventory all those roadways, take a look at the traffic along those roadways, collect speed data if you need to, and really identify where it would be feasible to build that out, to provide bike lanes, where you might want to do sharrows, you know, which path, where the opportunities for paths or trails might be. And then once you have a plan like that, that plan can be used to leverage more state money to get some of that stuff built. Okay. All right, let's move on to transit. You have a few bus routes, Connecticut Transit routes here. There's really 3 that really service Berlin. Another route, Route 45, just dips right into Berlin to provide service to Eversource's campus. Of course, the other part of the transit is obviously, you know, your Hartford line service here in Amtrak. You also have paratransit service operated by the Senior Center for seniors and other people that qualify for that service. So, and you know, as a more of a suburban town, you're fortunate to have a transit service that gets you to Meriden, Cromwell, gets you up to New Britain, further up to Hartford. Does anyone have any thoughts as to, you know, how well this service actually serves your residents? I would imagine that you have some residents of New Britain, by example, that use Connecticut Transit to get down into Berlin for work, whether it be portions of the Berlin Turnpike that are serviced by Route 512. Does anyone have thoughts on how well the transit is servicing the town?
The 501 bus route doesn't really serve Berlin at all, because it doesn't stop at all, with the exception of where the Ferndale Plaza is, and there really is no disembarking for people boarding the bus.
So can you make a requested stop though?
No, the only place that you cannot request a stop along the Chamberlain. So really, it only acts to conduit.
They actually do stop at Orchard though. No, Orchard is a stop on the.
Wow.
So they have an Orchard Road stop.
Yeah.
So
I've seen.
Oh, no.
People there. Like,
Wow.
so there's an Orchard Road stop, but other than that.
It's a conduit.
Okay, so it's a New Britain Meriden. Okay, so
Francisco, could you repeat the conversation a little? It was
yeah, so the
almost
501
inaudible.
bus, the 501 bus shown in purple that travels up down Chamberlain Highway. Really, it seems like it just acts as a conduit between New Britain and Meriden, and has very, very few stops in town, Orchard Road and any other, Kensington Center, Ferndale Plaza. And you can't even make, I guess you can't make a requested stop, like, so you can't flag the bus. There's no bus stop signs along the Chamberlain Highway that can stand out there. Okay.
They don't even have to
No.
mark.
I think it's very interesting. They should stop at Orchard Road because there's nothing there. I mean, there's houses there, but it's like every other neighborhood, a little bit more, rural, but
All
I
right,
can understand they stopped over at Ferndale or up near the old Rogers Market, but Orchard Road,
okay,
Maybe somebody just bothered them enough to where they said, okay, we'll start stopping.
yeah,
Orchard.
yeah.
yeah, I
So-
don't know.
If
But I
we
do
don't-
know when I do see the buses go by, if there's one or two people on it. I mean, I've never seen them loaded down. I sometimes wonder why they run these big buses. They should run like little mini buses or something.
Right, right.
Service of Meriden Wall,
Well, the Meriden Mall is,
but that's
going
almost
on.
dead
Yeah,
now.
but the
Right,
whole thing is
right.
that nobody's riding it.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's a big bus to be putting on the road for
right,
no
right.
ridership.
yeah,
I
okay.
don't know. But anyway, that's just an observation. Okay.
Are there, well, let me ask you this, are there any other locations along that corridor that would really, in your mind, benefit from a bus stop?
No,
Not really, not really.
no, I mean, it's farmland and
Yeah,
stuff, so,
right. It's
no.
not any big destinations, no.
No.
That's no-
That's why I'm pretty confused that they put it there, but I don't know.
Ferndale Market
I was just,
thing, but-
Okay.
gonna say, there are a few clusters of neighborhoods and
Yeah,
the
go ahead,
bus,
Maureen. Yeah,
I'm sorry, there are a few clusters of neighborhoods who may have the ability to utilize a bus system for transportation, whether it be to get to work or up to the busway or over to Farmington Avenue or something to get down to one of those intersections if the bus stopped. And I'm a little surprised. The bus that goes down Route 70 in Cheshire stops at a lot of the intersections where it gathers people from those neighborhoods who decided to take the bus into New Haven or Waterbury instead of drive their own car and deal with the parking. So it surprises me that it doesn't stop in a couple of those clustery neighborhoods
Right.
that are, or if the demand was asked for, especially maybe
Okay.
High Road would be a bad intersection where High Road spins off. In Norton Road or, I don't know, there's a few of them.
okay.
I guess when it go back to that, you're saying since it's a narrow road, they might just not have the ability to stop without
Well,
negatively impacting.
Yeah, the
traffic.
volumes aren't that high and the stop frequency wouldn't be too high. I don't think that's a factor. It's probably just a lack of demand more than anything. Yeah. All right, well, I'll note it. I don't expect that based upon my understanding of the need that we would be recommending another stop unless someone tells us otherwise.
The 512 should have stops at the new condo complexes that are being built on Pearl Turnpike.
Which, okay. So it does not, do you know that?
Does
It does
not
not currently?
stop. Yeah, it does the Pearl Turnpike, but does not stop basically anywhere on the Pearl Turnpike to Newington. You know, the three condo complexes on Pearl
Okay.
Turnpike going up.
Okay,
Yeah, but they're not all the way built, Tim, so I think
No, but
probably,
they
they will
they
be.
should have a future
Yeah.
stop
okay.
yeah.
because
All
they're
right.
they're part of the affordable system too.
Yeah,
Okay, well, we can take a look at that. I mean, that's the type of recommendation. It makes sense to get into the POCD, so you can go to it with Connecticut Transit and say, hey, we identified this as a priority to try to service these areas. You know, can you take a look at it?
And if they could get one to go to the workforce condo complex on Deming Road, it'd probably be a good place to get to too, because that is designated workforce.
Okay. All right, got it. Okay, let's talk about rail service. You know, as I already mentioned, you obviously have both Amtrak and Hartford Line rail service. What Jim brought to my attention, and I actually had never heard of it, I'm embarrassed to say, is a commuter rail study that was done by Connecticut DOT in 2016 that explored the feasibility of providing commuter rail service from Berlin Station to Waterbury Station along the existing Pan Am freight line.
Yep.
And unfortunately, and probably not too surprisingly, the study determined that implementing passenger rail service at this time is not viable due to the high costs, lower ridership, and difficulties in upgrading Terryville Tunnel. They mention alternative for an express bus service, but you know, I'm not sure that's what anyone's looking for.
That is, the bus service is existing.
Yeah, there's, okay, was that created following that study, or did it precede it?
Just about 16, yeah, a little earlier than that.
Okay, okay.
Bristol, Waterbury.
So there is, okay, all right. But is there, Bristol to Waterbury, but is there there isn't an express bus service that takes you from Berlin Station to Waterbury? Okay, so I think that's what they're trying. I think maybe they were talking about extending that express bus service all the way to Berlin Station as an option.
They can take the bus that goes up Farmington Avenue and pick it up at the
Right,
road,
they can get you, right.
get to New Britain, then get to
Get you
Waterbury.
from New Britain, right. So that, I mean, that the whole idea of commuter rail service there, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. So, you know, I don't think thered be any point in asking for that within the POCD, because it's been studied and they pretty much killed that idea.
That track is very outdated. Had a couple trains.
Yeah.
fall
Well,
on that track.
and we can get into this at our next meeting, because many of those freight lines are opportunities for rail trail options that could potentially get you up to New Britain to the Connecticut Fast Track Rail Trail. So that could be another possibility there. I know it's a somewhat, do I correctly understand it's a marginally active freight line, like occasional very low volume, or is it completely inactive?
It's once in a great while.
Yeah. We have,
And the trains that have gone on the tracks that collapsed and trains are rolled over. So
right, okay. Yeah, we have a similar line up in Hartford called the Griffin line that's right, like once a month maybe gets traffic at about 10 miles an hour.
Yeah, one of the issues I think about is just the connection between the Berlin train station and the bus line in New Britain. And, you know, we do have that bus line that was shown on the other map, but in commuting time periods, if you had something that was more, frequent, like we're talking about vans or whatever, to get people to connect the two, because there are no crossover stations at this point. Although they're talking about crossover stations, I guess, in Newington and West Hartford, Elmwood, but right now there's no crossover, and then in the Berlin station and the Britain, station are fairly close. So that might be something to put in the plan so that we can, if we have an opportunity to see funding for that at some point.
Okay. And so Jim, would that be the connection from Berlin Station to New Britain Station, and with what kind of service we look like, with like a bus?
to the fast track and
With extending Connecticut Fast Track to provide service to Berlin
Right.
Station? Is that from New
Right.
Britain? Okay, gotcha.
Well, if you can use the rail line, that section of the rail line, you can
Yeah,
make a
as
direct
like a
connection, but
busway,
if you can't,
extend the
then
busway.
at least, some kind of shuttle or whatever, so that people
Yeah,
can
yeah.
use both lines.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, with Fast Track to say that they would dedicate or build a line to I'm saying, oh no, that's gonna be a nightmare. So they would have to use something that would be existing, or I don't know,
Right.
manipulate their bus schedule now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to plant that kind of seed.
If I remember correctly, there was I went to a conference that some of the communities down at the southern shore of the state
Yeah.
developed shuttle type systems to connect to their train station.
Yeah.
Both from areas within town, but I think they also did a little bit out of town, such as this would be, in order to make connectivity, that last connection people need to make.
Right. Okay. Good. All right, let's talk about traffic safety. It's something we should always be focused on. And we pulled down data from the Connecticut Crash Database Repository, which is maintained by University of Connecticut. It's an incredible resource for crash data. We used to have to go to police departments and beg for files and tabulate it all. And now it's all online and GIS. You can download spreadsheets. It's fantastic. And basically what it told us is that your crashes are absolutely what you would expect, right? They highly correlated with high traffic corridors and with intersections. So to no surprise, Route 15 has the highest crash rates. Why more than Route 9? Well, because it has traffic lights on it. That's why. So 15 to 9 and 71 and on down the line. And that table on the left are the top 10 routes for crashes. We didn't see anything that I had one of our transportation engineers, our traffic engineers, take a look at this. He didn't see anything unusual. This is very typical patterns. That being said, if there is a location, an intersection in town that you feel everyone talks about as being a real risk or being known as problematic, we can take a closer look at the data and maybe recommend that the state take a look at it, or the town work towards resolving whatever issue may be present there.
I always heard that Burnham and Farmington Avenue is bad.
Okay.
I have to say Orchard Road and the Berlin Turnpike,
Okay.
especially at that signal light at the end of Orchard Road, because that light can turn green for you and you can start to cross and a car just zips right through.
Oh, okay.
And then they've had some really, I know a lot of people who actually avoid that because these people just disregard the lights on the turnpike. And I think Middletown Road suffers the same thing, but not with the frequency that you see on Orchard Road.
Okay.
And part of it may be because the light is so quick. So if you're on Orchard Road, you only get 5 cars through. So if you're number 10 in line, you're screwed, so to speak.
Right. And did I hear Deming Road and Berlin Turnpike? Okay. Okay.
Deming Road, yeah.
Okay.
That's the worst
The
one.
the light system through Newington is being revamped right now to
It is correct. Yeah.
video type of camera synchronization.
Big Brother's
But
watching.
south of Route 9, it is not.
Right.
And I think that's got to continue south, at least to Meriden line,
Yeah. I think the other thing is, well, I think maybe somebody already mentioned in the room, Farmington Avenue over by Kensington Market, that Porter's Pass exchange.
Okay.
That's a tough one. It's, for some reason, it's just an ill-fated intersection. I'm not sure how they can straighten that out.
372, Route 9 exit.
372 at Route 9. Yeah.
Exit. We got north from the.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's a bottleneck on Route 9 there where 372 splits off to the left lane. Traffic in the evening will back up a long way there.
Oh, yeah.
And that should be either re-signed or something for people don't start cutting across lanes, go to the left lane
Right.
exit.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll take a look at those particular intersections and see if they're you know, how they look with respect to the data, and if we really, you know, see the data supporting that, we might consider making a short list of areas that should be a priority. When we take a look, as I mentioned, when we take a look at your crash patterns and types of crashes, when we take a look at the trends, so we take a look at crash trends, similar to what we do for traffic data over time. And what we see is that Berlin has followed a very similar pattern of crashes as the state as a whole, with one exception, a big uptick in 2021. So the Berlin's the top line, that dark purple line, and the light blue line is the state. And we have different vertical axes here because we're talking about different units. But when we take a look at the patterns, they're very similar, which is 2015 crashes going up. And let me clue you in on what was driving those crashes up. Is smartphones, is distracted driving. We've seen it in the state, we've seen it across the country. People basically learning how to live with this new technology and learning to exercise some control, and police starting to enforce that sort of thing. So we expect that those rates likely kind of peaked around 2018 or something, and then we see the impact of COVID with a lot less traffic. Crash rates came way down, and Berlin is unfortunately rebounded with respect to crashes in 2021. Right? You're bounced right back, which is nothing to be too excited about. So maybe there are some locations that really need to be addressed. Those crashes, there's that chart on the right just shows where those crashes are occurring, and a lot of them occur along non-junction, means just along the corridor, not an intersection, and then or through roadway. And then about the other half intersection related, some with entrance and exit ramps in the green there, that would be Route 9. And then a bunch of others, mostly driveways, that sort of thing.
So when you say non-junction, are we talking 515? Are we talking 71? Are we talking the Chamberlain Highway, Berlin Turnpike?
I need to check on the actual specific definition of non-junction. I think it means along a roadway, not at an intersection, but not as a result of through movement activity, which would be the through roadway on the right. It's a pretty narrow definition. I admittedly,
Yeah,
I don't know exactly what the definition is.
Okay, all right. Just curious if you knew. All right.
I think more than anything, what we're seeing is crashes are distributed all over the place. If I were to go back to the map on the previous slide, you were to take a close look at that, that's exactly what you would see, right? It's wherever you have traffic, you have crashes.
Okay.
There's nothing unusual going on in Berlin, and yeah, you might have some intersections that are real hot spots that we'll take a second look at, and maybe make some recommendations that those get some attention within the plan.
Well, I was just curious to see if the increase might have been caused by people who are not so much living in Berlin or being in Berlin, but people just transiting through. And that's only because I hear, noise on the Berlin Turnpike.
Yeah.
I know the Chamberlain Highway, these people get into these, they get themselves in a situation. They just put the pedal to the metal, and then they're out of there. And then next thing you know,
Right.
crash bang, but they happen to be in Berlin. So
Right.
it becomes our accident. So I don't know. I was just curious just to see how many of them were transiting through at high speeds. And
Yeah,
driving.
I really don't know what was driving those particular crashes. We do have all the data on the individual crashes, the type, and all that. It would be easy enough to figure out where within 2021 what areas were most prevalent. That's pretty easy to determine. Outside of that, we'd have to kind of go one by one.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay. Bike and pedestrian crashes. very, very low activity, which it can say a couple things about you. Either this is a very safe place to walk and bike around, or you really just don't have a lot of people walking and biking. But these numbers are fortunately pretty low. We want them all to be zero. In some years, you've had zero for bikes at least. So I don't think there's a call to action for anything in particular other than building out more sidewalk network to get pedestrians off the road, ensuring that crossings are safe for them, and helping to guide bicyclists towards areas that are safe for them to cycle. All right, I forgot we had a slide dedicated to this. We kind of covered this already, but the Deming Road project really kind of got its start from a road safety audit back in 2016. This is a program that my firm works with DOT on. We're in the process of working with several communities across Connecticut. DOT funds these. You bring transportation traffic engineers in for a day, walk the whole area, take pictures, measure things, and then make a series of recommendations to improve safety. That road audit made a number of recommendations for improvements to improve safety along Deming Road. That some of those bigger improvements have not yet happened. They're on the radar though. And as we'd already discussed, Episcopal Road, which intersects Deming Road, those improvements are, in progress. And so there will be improvements to the intersection of Episcopal and Deming Road. All right, that covers it for our transportation infrastructure. Any other comments or questions before we move on to sewer and water infrastructure? Joan, anything? No?
No, just, I know that you're gonna circle back to in the next meeting and we'll be touching base. So this is good because we can get all of our creative juices going here, and figure out about our bike trails and shared roadways and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So we'll move on to.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about the infrastructure that you don't necessarily see it, but you need it.
Yep. It's
And
there.
that would be your water and sewer infrastructure. And I think as most of you, if not all of you, are aware, the town is served by 3 water companies or water districts. And that includes the Berlin Water Control Commission, the Kensington Fire District or Water District, and Worthington Fire or Water District. And the map on the right shows you the extents of those districts. This map is a little different than the map on the next page because this map shows all of the areas geographically that the Berlin Water Control Commission is authorized or has jurisdiction to provide service to. This is not the area it currently provides service to, that light blue area, but the areas where it has that jurisdiction. The darker blue there is the Kensington Fire District, its service area. The real bright kind of aqua cyan blues, the Worthington District. And then the area in red are areas that are sewer service areas that are serviced, maintained under the jurisdiction of the 3 different districts. New England's an interesting place in that our communities just can't be small enough. We have to carve them up into even smaller pieces. And that is the story of your water districts here. So here's the map that shows the actual service areas or areas that are within reach of service. And the light pink is Berlin, the green is Kensington, and the dark red there is Worthington. So let's get into the numbers of these districts, talk a little bit about their history. So both the Kensington Fire District and Worthington Fire District were created through special acts of the Connecticut General Assembly in 1921. Basically, those districts had put in mains for fire hydrants, and then it occurred to them they could start selling water to households. And so the state gave them permission to become water districts, providing domestic water to households, in addition to servicing their hydrants. So that was their origins. Both of those districts are also special taxing districts. So you pay, a certain point or whatever it is on your mill rate goes to those districts if you live within them. What is more interesting is that your water, if you're here in Berlin, is coming from a bunch of different places, depending which district you live in. By example, the city of New Britain and the Cromwell Fire District supply 45% of the town's water, with a little more than half coming from the town's Elton well field. Consolidation of the water companies, as it would probably occur to everyone that might make sense, has been studied more than once over the past several decades, the most recent study being about 10 years ago. And guess what? I think every single one of those studies, if not the last one, said that consolidating probably make a lot of sense because it would reduce maintenance costs. You could save maybe $1 million a year in administrative and maintenance costs. And it's probably a good thing to move towards work towards. That being said, change is not easy. And so I think we have to, as a body here, as a committee and commission, really need to decide within the POCD if you want to take a position on this, and whether or not you want to say that it's something that's important to do in the near term, long term, whenever. So with that being said, let me open it up to all of you to give me your impression as to whether or not things should stay exactly as they are, or if consolidation makes sense to you.
I have some comments to share just to kind of start the conversation.
Sure.
Francisco, could you go back a slide?
This one or the one prior?
Maybe, well, this one or the one prior, either one. Probably the one prior. Why don't we do the,
Right
yeah.
there. Yeah.
So this is a topic that more recently is really important to me because of just seeing the way the population is increasing. And I recall being offended by, we were in a public hearing a couple of years back where we had an applicant that was asking for a zone change along Chamberlain Highway to be residential land.
Mhm.
And the particular property that was being proposed for this zone change has a well on it that is actually owned by the city of Meriden.
Mm.
And Meriden had a representative come to the public hearing for this requested zone change. And it happened to be in a drought year. And the person from Meriden basically threatened, I kind of took it as a threat, that they intended to be activating that particular well. And they were opposed to the requested zone change because it would affect their water.
Right.
Now, in that area, the southwest portion of town that's mostly light blue, but particularly south of Orchard Road, and along Chamberlain Highway, on either side of Chamberlain Highway. If you look at watershed maps, there is essentially what I would describe as an underground lake. And Meriden has actively been acquiring properties in the southwesternmost corner of town that I presume are not being taxed. I'm not certain of that, but I would think, I'm guessing that one town might, I assume that there's maybe some consideration just because it's town-owned, City of Meriden-owned land. So Meriden also has, through those properties, a series of reservoirs that are within the town of Berlin. Starting in the Hubbard Park area, there's the Meermeer Reservoir, going to the Hallmere Reservoir, going to the Kenmere Reservoir, circling back and coming to the Elmere Reservoir. And the only one of those reservoirs located in Meriden is the Meermeer Reservoir. So to my knowledge, Berlin doesn't benefit from any of Meriden's activities to acquire this watershed property and take control of water that's within our town. And so this is an area that I think we need to be more focused on preserving for ourselves instead of letting our water rights get gobbled up by outside interests.
Maureen or Jim, I wonder if you have any institutional knowledge you care to weigh in with regarding this issue.
I have very little. I have what the conversations mostly that I've had with Diane with regard to it and looking into the well that she had commented on. Other than that, as far as any acquisitions being newer, it's the time period I'd have to look at. I'm not particularly familiar though, but Jim may have a longer knowledge base than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Meriden's acquired some properties that are near the reservoirs, close, more recently, in kind of really in the southern part of town. As far as the well is concerned, there hasn't been any, much activity in that regard that I'm aware of. The thing that I find interesting, you look at the aquifer protection areas map that the state created. And I don't think that there's really, I didn't see that there was something that was identified on that map. So if there is a big aquifer there, we should identify it and map it. But it's not, I don't believe it's on the state aquifer map at this point.
Yeah, I don't recall. I would have to go back and check, Jim. We did review that mapping when Anthony covered natural resources a few months ago, and I don't recall there being a designated aquifer protection area in that location either.
Yeah, just on the sewer service area issue, just globally, one of the things I think in the previous two plans, particularly in the 2013 plan, we had recommendations about limiting the service, the sewer service area to kind of, maintain the rural characteristics of particularly, South Kensington and the areas that are, are not sewered and are not, more intensely developed at this point. And then, now there was, as and I really wasn't involved, but as we hear it, there was a concern about, if we had these areas of town that were unclaimed in the state map, that another, like a Meriden or a New Britain could come in and claim additional territory for, for themselves. And so that's why, as I understand, the Water Control District claimed the rest of the area. But I think, and obviously we identified in the 2013 plan, the idea that there might be some extensions with respect to the Shadow Meadow property, and that's, transpiring at this point perhaps. But the other areas, I think, it's kind of where, making sure that there's that, connection between the Water Control District then and the Planning and Zoning Commission, so that everybody's on the same page about whether or not, sewer, our plan is to, extend sewer.
Well, let's, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. One of the things also that Jim's comments are reminding me of is, and I don't know what the status is, but a number of years ago, we had an application for a power plant to be going in Meriden, actually. But for the construction of the power plant, they needed water for cooling, and they intended to bring the water in, I think, from the Connecticut River in the Cromwell area, and the line was supposed to come across town and excuse me just a second. The line was supposed to come across town and then south along Chamberlain Highway, and the stipulation was that the water through that line was supposed to be non-potable. So I don't remember things being dug up as if that line ever made it that far. But the intent was to not bring potable water down the highway.
But that project didn't happen, correct?
Correct. They went bankrupt.
Okay.
They started the project. So I'm kind of thinking that cooling water line never made it.
Right. Okay.
They had, I think, I'm trying to remember exactly, but they had applied for a water diversion permit and they never got the permit. And obviously didn't build the project and donated most of the land then to Berlin and Meriden. And that's all happened.
Okay.
The one that bothers me is similar to Diane's, but it's with New Britain. Our major ponds in Berlin all sold to New Britain for $1, which they don't pay any taxes for or anything else. Water's pumped from our ponds into New Britain when needed and sold back to us at a higher price. We got to become efficient ourselves. There is well sites in town that have been searched and found. And those sites should be looked into, even though, because I know they're having difficulty with the Alton Road site now. And that aquifer that Diane was talking about does feed Alton Road well site. So, it's a big important thing that we get our water service up to par, that we don't have to buy so much water from the Britain or Cromwell. One site's the Tollgate Road, one site's Middletown Road, and there's a couple other sites. But it's time for the Water and Sewer Department to become less dependent on other water departments or water services.
Let's talk about that. Let's keep moving forward, because we're going to get into exactly that, some of those relationships that are in place, how it works, and then what direction you're headed right now. Okay, so real quick overview, you have almost 100 miles of sewer mains in town, 72 miles of water mains, and this is across the 3 districts. You've got a $2 million water storage tank, ongoing work, work recently completed include a $4 million infiltration inflow sewer lining. That's to keep groundwater from entering your sewer pipes and keep sewer pipes from leaking out, or sewer water from leaking out of your pipes. So that those were recently completed. The Elton Road pump station was rehabilitated. It's working, as I understand, it's working as expected. You have a sanitary sewer lift station. There's water storage tank painting work being done. And what we just talked about is the fact that within Berlin, some of your water assets are owned by neighboring communities, which do in fact sell the water back to you. When we take a look at the sewer and water infrastructure needs, and this comes from a conversation I had with Berlin Water Department head, and by reviewing a study that was done for the entire area. And I'll talk about that study a little more in a moment. What we know is that the Deming Road sewer pump station needs a $3 million improvement, and that the MDC is going to fund a little more than half of those improvements because it ties in to their network and they use it. The Berlin Turnpike and Middletown Roads pump stations, it's all sewer, needs to be updated. You have ongoing inflow and infiltration prevention improvements that are needed on Kensington, within Kensington and Worthington districts. Water mains in East Berlin need relining and replacement. Improvement of the mains in those areas would allow for an interconnection with the Middletown Water Department. An interconnection with the Meriden Water Company needs to be completed. There's ongoing work to open that up. That is mostly through improvements to water main at the southern end of the Berlin Turnpike. An interconnection with the Cromwell Fire District needs to be expanded through some water main improvements. The interconnection with the New Britain Water Department needs to be upgraded as well. And the interconnection with the MDC needs to be maintained both in terms of giving it the maintenance it needs so it remains functional, but also keeping that active and keeping that interconnection and agreement in place. So I think if there's anything this list should impress upon you is the fact that the strategy for the town's water districts and mostly the Berlin Water Commission is to ensure that there are active interconnections with other water companies so that you have the water you need when you need it. And then you can also sell water to surrounding communities when they need it. This is, kind of like an insurance policy that everyone is connected. And that's the general direction where things appear to be headed. Which is a little different than the idea of we need to protect our own water supply for ourselves. This general approach and direction is that we're part of a regional system is what it's moving towards. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or thoughts regarding that?
Well, I'll chime in. Well, number one, I want to thank Diane for sharing that information with me. I mean, it's kind of scary to think that, our water resource that we have underground could be being siphoned off by other towns, yet we don't participate in the benefit of it, which also makes me very worried because you wonder, if you do get yourself in a bad drought situation or things go south, I mean, how much more siphoning will be done? I'm going to be honest with you. I know that it's almost, I guess it's taboo in town that we talk about the water districts. And I've always wondered why we had all these little water districts out there levying taxes on people, and some people are actually shocked when they get their water bill. And then when I think that they're collecting this money, and then I'm seeing before me that they're looking for 3 million for this, we need to do all the pipes in East Berlin. This is no chump change. So I have to wonder, where's all the money been going? I mean, if you're collecting all these money from people that are paying water bills, then shouldn't the water districts be supporting their maintenance and doing maintenance as they go along? You know, if a pump station needs to be done and they know that, you know, they should fix it and put it on the agenda and have it done for them. And I hear what you're saying, Francesco, is sort of like regionalizing water, like everybody owns the water, everyone's going to contribute, everyone's going to do it. But right now that's not happening. I'm not sure what arrangement could be made that it would be fair to take place and happen. But also I know is that the people of the town, the ones who have water and sewer, they're paying dearly, but I don't think the town is getting anything back. I see the money going out of their pocketbooks, but where does the money go? I mean, so that a question is a frustration of mine, and I can't answer it because I don't know how this water district thing works. Maybe somebody on the commission can help me.
Let's do this. I have a few more slides for you that help understand how each water district operates. And let's get through those and then we can come back to that discussion. How's that?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the Berlin Water Control Commission. It serves 2,800 households within Berlin, 121 commercial and 15 industrial businesses. So the total population of people served is 6,200. So, you know, a fraction of your population, little less than a third served. It sold 345.8 million gallons of water to all those residences and businesses in 2021. The BWCC does not have a tax levy. It's fee-based service, and there are the rates right there. It produces 62% of the water that it pumps through its system and purchases the balance from both the New Britain and mostly New Britain, and to a lesser extent, the Cromwell fire districts. It also processes about 1 billion gallons of sanitary effluent for the entire town through its sewer collection system, which discharges to the Mattabasset district. So you send it downstream. As I discussed, there have been improvements made to the Elton well field. You have 2 wells there, well, 2A and 1B. Well 1B replaced well 1A, and the water from those wells is blended together. And it has a total capacity of about 1 million gallons per day. So it's a very reliable water source. I spoke with BWCC's manager, Ray, and you know, he didn't express any concerns with me about the reliability of that source. And I think they're comfortable with the upgrades that are done, and that it will continue to be a reliable source in the foreseeable future. The Kensington Fire District serves us actually a slightly larger population, 200 residences, 228 commercial with 7,500 plus people served. It does have, it is a taxing district, so there's a mill rate. Its sewer and water rates are comparable to the other districts. And its water source consists of supply from New Britain Water Department. Daily water production north of 650,000 gallons. with estimated yearly being 240 million, and there are 44 miles of water main in that district. And then finally, Worthington, which is the smallest of the districts, 1,200 customers with 2,800 population served. Once again, taxing district, mill rate and water rates are comparable to the other districts. And the Worthington Fire District water is exclusively supplied by the Burlington Water Control Department through 7 different metered locations. Okay. Now, there was a coordinated water system plan or study that was done to address the fact that there are a number of different water districts in the region. And that plan, done in 2018, made a series of recommendations. First of all, the plan was many communities. You can kind of barely make it out in that map of Connecticut. Basically all of central Connecticut, from the shore to the Massachusetts line. All of the water systems, municipal water systems, were studied, and the status of those systems documented. It's a very thorough plan. And there were a number of recommendations for Berlin and local water systems that came out of that plan. So let's get into some of the numbers. Based upon their numbers, and once again, another comparison based upon the numbers I just showed you. These were estimates. The numbers are maybe a little different than what I showed you on the preceding slides. But here you can see it measured up together. Berlin, a Water Control Commission, Kensington Fire District serving about the same population size, with Worthington being about half the size of the other two. And the interconnections listed here. So you have water just going back and forth here, right? Depending upon need. You have New Britain Water Department, which is a supplier to the Berlin Water Department. They also supply to the Kensington Fire District. The Berlin Water Control Commission or Water Department supplies to the Worthington Fire District. The Cromwell Fire District supplies to the Berlin Water Control Commission, as does the MDC. Although the MDC, there's a connection there, but you could see it's at 0 because that connection is there as a resource if needed, but is rarely used. And at the time of this study, there was 0 documented use. There are also emergency connections between the Burlington and Worthington fire districts and the Kensington and Berlin Water Control Commission districts, so you could send water in either direction on an emergency basis. Okay. And this is what it all looks like on a map. The E's are the emergency connections. The A's are the active connections. And the gray areas are the areas with water service. Red areas are potential interconnections. So you could see the Cromwell Berlin interconnection, that little red arrow in the green there. That's the interconnection I'd mentioned earlier with the New Britain one in the upper left corner there, and another Meriden Berlin connection. Looks almost like a little red dot there on the Berlin Meriden line along the Berlin Turnpike. So increasingly, this is moving towards a far more connected network with surrounding towns, with a lot of interconnects that can be opened up to allow water to be piped in either direction. All right, that plan, as I mentioned, was a 2018 plan. It made a number of recommendations. Of course, this is a regional plan. It's up to the town to do what is best for the town. But it advocated some things that are already taking shape. It recommended that the Berlin Water Control Commission and Meriden Water Division develop an emergency interconnect, and that work is ongoing. along the turnpike. It talks about the need for 1.7 million in water main improvements to make that happen. So as I mentioned, those are in planning design stages and will likely be completed 2023, 2024. It talks about the Middletown Water Department that they should consider developing emergency interconnection with the Berlin Water Control Commission and Cromwell Fire District, and you're moving towards that as well. Okay, I'm going to pause there. We'll talk about the Mattabesett District in a moment. I'll pause there. Any more questions or comments on all of these water districts and the move towards a more interconnected system?
Yeah, are the Kensington and Bloomington districts, are they governmental bodies or are they private?
They are, yeah, they're kind of like a quasi, they are governmental bodies. They have their own boards. The town of Berlin does not have a direct authority over them. Their boards are what are the basically governance structure that they have. They're interesting. A district is a very interesting thing. It's almost because it has its own jurisdiction. It's almost like its own little municipality within Berlin. So it is not a private in the way we think about commercial private, almost like its own town is what it is.
So I guess the leading to the point is, are these districts, these water districts, are they, do they have to apply by freedom of information?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe they do. I'm not a lawyer. I believe they do. I've never had to FOIA one of them. I could tell you it can be a little more difficult to get those people talking than a town entity. You know, the Berlin Water Control Department is very eager to share information with me. I got some rates out of the other districts. That being said, to be fair to them, I didn't ask for a meeting or anything like that. They may be very forthcoming if we decide it'd be worthwhile to get a better understanding of their operations, what they've been doing. You know, we could certainly request that. Okay. Anyone else? Any other comments, questions regarding the water districts?
I was curious, because when we talked about the sizes of the different water districts, you said that, you know, basically everyone was serving like, what was it, 6,000 or 7,000 homes, except for the Worthington, which is only like,
Smallest. Yeah.
why is that? I mean, again,
Yeah. Fewer houses in the district. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. Just fewer houses within the district. It has its geographic area is a little smaller than the other two, and just fewer houses in that district.
all right.
I think Francisco indicated before they were chartered in 1921. So, you know.
I have two questions, I think, or maybe a question and a comment. Francisco, can a couple of slides back, there were this one, whoop, the map.
Would you like to go to the map?
Yep, go forward one, that one right there. The non-community water systems, what is meant by non-community water system?
Yeah, it's just serving a local development or enterprise. It's not a part of a water system serving multiple households.
So the reason I'm asking is because the area that we were discussing earlier, just east of Chamberlain Highway, the smaller green indicator.
Yeah, the hatched area.
Yeah, inside of that beige. If I saw a road map laid over that, I would guess that is the one of the Meriden City wells. by its location.
Okay,
And so to identify it as a non-community water system is curious to me. And then to the issue of fairness for the interconnected system, assuming there's some consideration for between towns for taxes, I'm just
Yeah.
curious. I'm curious how that works and how the fairness is determined. How is that negotiated when to look at a map, you might not even consider some parcels of property owned by Meriden or New Britain to have any impact on the water supply. But yet they may actually receive some consideration tax-wise, or whatever the arrangement is between the towns may not necessarily be as fair as we would like to think.
okay.
Yeah, I don't remember all the details, but there's certainly, it's partly an assessment issue. There was, legal disputes between Berlin and New Britain, for example, settlement that involved, taxation on water company property, as well as who pays what on the probate, court costs. And, again, I'm not really familiar with all the details, but I know that has been some of what has transpired. So it's a complex issue. Certainly, if we're gonna dig into any of those things, we need, people like the assessor or the corporation counsel or whatever to give us more background.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jim, because this is not something that we normally discuss with planning and zoning, except for, a development being watered and sewered. But as far as the inner workings of how the system is, I'm not sure how we arrived at this point. And I'm not sure what the best resolution is moving forward. Again, Diane, I think you brought in some really good points to sort of make us all stop and think for a minute to see exactly what direction we're going in, and how is it fair to all participants. So I do think that we need to find out more about how this is all set up. I don't know. I'm just thinking.
I agree with you, Joan. Tax wise, first of all, that was brought up. I know that battle that Jim said happened with all the New Britain owned property in Berlin. From park systems to dumps to everything that New Britain owns in Berlin.
Right. Beehive Field, remember Beehive Field?
Beehive Field, the property line goes right down the 50-yard line of Beehive Field, of the football field there. So that was a big tax thing if they owe taxes on that big field. And there was a big fight. And that fight should be pursued by Berlin because New Britain has been literally dumping on us, the dumps, and not paying taxes. Again, I have the consideration I see on here, a red square, proposed supply sources. I don't see them on this map, but we got those connections for emergency connections, and most of those are emergency connections. If there's a big fire in town and the fire department draws down the water, the emergency ones are supposed to kick in and supply water to the where we draw down the water source. But with that said, we're not pursuing supplies ourselves. So we have all these interconnections that we can take water from all these other districts and we can give them water, but we can't supply ourselves real good because we only got Elton Low. Okay. Why aren't we actively looking at these proposed supply sources that we can be more efficient, bring our water costs down, and bring our water bills down, which have drastically gone up since they gave the billing to this company that does the billing now, and paying them, and the water rate hike that they did in the last couple of years. Our water and sewer drastically going up. I seen on there that we're paying more for sewer than we're paying for, than we're paying for water. It's a direct thing. You know, water comes in the house, goes down into the sewer. You know, it's supposed to be pretty much the same. And it's not. You know, so it's a water control commission thing, but I think the whole town as a whole should be looking in to support themselves.
Yeah, there's a lot of different variables in this, Francesco, and I know we're not going to be able to settle out tonight, but this is I think a very interesting conversation to have. But I think we also need to learn about how this whole system works.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we can invite Ray to a future meeting if you like, Ray Jarima.
Yeah.
I think can enlighten us on many of these things. And a lot of the cost factors are really driven by these capital projects that have been completed and that are planned, that are needed. And I think one of the other things I got from the conversations with Ray was I think there's been a lot of deferred investment. And, you know, now like the infiltration projects, and then, you know, like a Mattabesset, you know, sewer costs where obviously they had to upgrade the system down there. And fortunately, you know, Middletown joined, so we got some break there. But, you know, there's a lot of capital projects going on, and these are separate, you know, in terms of budgets. You know, water control is a separate budget from the town budget. So, you know, again, we can get Ray, you know, to get into more specifics if you like.
Right.
You know, it's
Go
like,
ahead, Tim.
like we get I don't know, we get the short end of the stick, seems like all the time. The sewer's going to Cromwell, getting burning stuff down there and into the ashes, and the ashes are brought back up in Berlin and dumped in Berlin. Okay, and we're not getting any money for dumping it in Berlin. You know, so every couple of years they come to us to raise the elevation of the ashes going into Berlin. You know, we should be having some compensation for that, you know, like the Britain dumping in our town too.
Yeah, there's just a lot of variables in here. I think we just get to more information, but go ahead, Francisco.
All right, so I think I understand where you're going with your concerns about the water districts. You really want a little more transparency. You want to better understand what the agreements are, how town land's being used, how it's being taxed, you know, what you can expect, and you really are very interested in the town being a little less reliant on its neighbors and being able to use more of its own water. So we'll note that, we'll carry it forward and see what we can do with that. As Jim noted, the cost of your sewer cost is really related kind of out of your hands. It's related to the cost of improving, maintaining the wastewater facilities that the Mattabesset district operates. And you are one of a handful of members of that district that has a responsibility for basically paying your share. Berlin joined the district 1961. Water flows downhill from New Britain, Berlin, parts of Farmington, Newington to Cromwell and into the Connecticut River. You are about 16% of the flow of the system at 3.35 million gallons. And the district, one of the things the district has done so that they can remain in compliance with their water discharge permit is to reduce the inflow and infiltration you have in your system here in town. The less water, groundwater you have flowing into the system, the less they have to treat on their end, and the better they can be in compliance. Now, the town of Berlin is doing that and can do that for the pipes within Berlin Water Control Commission network. However, the town, as we have discussed, does not have control of the Kensington or Worthington districts, and we know has not been the same level of reinvestment in these types of projects in those districts. Okay.
All right, good deal. What's up next?
All right, shifting gears just a little bit as stormwater infrastructure. The town, as required by all municipalities in Connecticut, has an MS4 permit, that is shorthand for municipal separate stormwater system. And the town has a plan that was conducted in 2017. They do annual reports. The plan has many components to it. Education is a very important part of that. Reducing illicit discharges, runoff from construction sites, doing monitoring, that sort of thing. The areas hashed in yellow are considered the urbanized areas based on census data, and those are the areas that are prioritized for reducing discharges and improving the system within those areas, and that's based on population density for the most part. So if there's anything I want to say about this, is that the town is doing their part to keep up with what's required under their MS4 permit. I think they recognize if they had more money, they would probably do more, but they are in good standing and in compliance with that permit. No big projects planned. Some recent big projects that have occurred relating to other types of infrastructure include capital projects such as the Kensington Dam, impounds the Mattabesset River, which forms the 12-acre railroad pond, and a $1.6 million repair project, including a state and federally funded fish ladder was installed and completed in 2019. And there's a picture of the work in progress. And there are also other planned and needed capital improvements across town. By example, one of your other dams, the Paper Good Dam, needs maintenance and repairs. An engineering review is planned this year, and the town's gearing up to conduct repairs based upon that review as soon as 2024. Other types of infrastructure that the town owns and maintains include streetlights. The town purchased the streetlights from Eversource a few years back as part of an upgrade that included switching over to LED lights. That means the town doesn't lease them anymore. It owns them, but also means town has to maintain them. And from what I understand, speaking with Mike Ahern, your DPW director, they need a standard for lights because he said he's got a dozen different types of light fixtures across town. They want to move to a more standardized fixture to make it easier for them to maintain and replace more universally. So that's something you'd like to move towards. And getting into the public utility side, private side of the equation here is broadband service, by example, is really important to business enterprise and to a lot of residents, particularly with people increasingly working from home and needing a really good connection. It's our understanding you have a couple of different providers, Comcast, of course. GoNet Speed is a fiber optic provider, which I have up in Hartford. They are currently established and expanding within Berlin. That's a map of their service area from their website right now. These things happen kind of quietly because it's a private service, and sometimes, believe it or not, they do work without even pulling permits. And before you know it, there's just a service advertised in town that you didn't know you had access to. I think overall it's a good thing that there's more broadband in town. It's attractive to residents. It's attractive to businesses as well. Natural gas service. We know that you have local service provided by Connecticut Natural Gas. I've not as of yet been able to obtain the exact service area here in Berlin. It's next to impossible to get that from Connecticut Natural Gas unless the town has something on record. I can't show you a map of that. I know if you were to type in your address into their website, they can tell you whether or not you can get service there. So if you could all just type in every address into the website for me and then get me back the list of addresses that do and do not have service, I'll make your map. You are also, and I don't know if you knew this, the town is traversed east to west by the Algonquin natural gas transmission line, which is a big main that goes from, I believe, from Pennsylvania, New York, all the way up to eastern parts of Connecticut, up and further up into New England. So that runs right across town as well. The map we're looking at on the bottom is the CNG gas area with Berlin being kind of at the southern tip of that, surrounded by districts or communities that are actually serviced by Eversource. All right, that wraps up our review of infrastructure. Did we touch upon everything? Is there an aspect of the town's infrastructure that we totally missed? Good. As I mentioned,
I'm sorry, I'm just wondering if one of the things that we shouldn't be considering as part of infrastructure is the future of electric vehicles and the charging stations and the things that go along with that.
yeah, absolutely.
And I can report to you on the Connecticut Natural Gas, the Algonquin gas line crosses the street that I live on. About a quarter of a mile, maybe a little more than a quarter of a mile north of me, but we don't have the option of getting natural gas.
Isn't that ironic?
Diane, I'm there with you because I have the pipeline in my backyard.
Yeah.
Okay.
It traverses my property, and yet there's no natural gas. I always say it's a big joke. I got tons of it here.
You don't want to hook to that line. That's a high pressure line. It'll blow right your whole house right up.
Well, I wasn't going to go out drilling, Tim, if that's what you were.
All right. Diane, thanks for bringing up electric vehicles. Let's talk about that at our next meeting, because we're going to get into facilities, and so we'll be talking about school grounds and buildings and parks and this municipal campus here with the library and town hall, and maybe we can have a conversation about where municipal electric charging vehicle stations should be considered. The private market is going to quickly get ahead, I think, of a lot of municipalities. Sure, municipalities are rolling out a handful of stations here and there. It's only a matter of time once these electric vehicles really take off before our gas stations become electric charging stations with some sort of rapid charge or even battery swap out service or something. These things are going to move fast once it finally catches.
When's our next meeting?
It's scheduled for about 3 weeks. I think I have a placeholder slide for that at the end. So let's
Okay.
let's keep going. I have just a couple slides. We did want to give you an update on the outreach we have planned. We've been fine tuning the survey for a few months now, and we would we'd like to launch it mid-month. You have all been provided a link to that survey. It remains available to you. So if you haven't taken a look at it, please do let us know if there's something we need to reword or another question we should ask. We will remain receptive to your feedback all the way up until the week we need to launch, because then we need to close it and get it launched. We are working towards a public workshop. Right now, we have a tentative date of June 9th. And we are planning on an in-person workshop. We're hoping we can do that. We're going to remain flexible as we need to be, but the idea is an in-person workshop on that date. It's a Thursday, I believe. And we are also planning on conducting, we're scoped to do thematic meetings. Thematic meeting is basically like a small workshop focused on specific topics. Whereas the larger public workshop, we're going to talk about everything with everyone. And the thematic meetings are really, 20 or so people in a room, or even fewer maybe. And we have 4 general topic area meetings we're considering. And then there they are listed. And we're looking to do that some like 3rd, 4th week of June.
Okay, I will say that I already have something slated for the June 9th. I think it's 6 to 8, unfortunately. I
think
don't
we're doing-
know if I'm necessary to be there. I mean, I can hop in afterwards, but just so that you know.
Okay.
So we did have a conversation about participation from the committee, and not because of, having to publicize it as a committee meeting, and amount of participation from committee members we should or shouldn't have at these meetings, or would want or not want, and I think we left it, and Francisco and Jim remind me, but I think we left it with, if anyone has a particular meeting they'd be more interested in attending than another, that we try to, dole them out, so to speak, or have you participate in those that may be of interest, but certainly not add to the plate of you having additional meetings required to be attended.
Yeah, and it was specifically the thematic meetings, just so that we didn't have to do all the noticing for that. And our game plan was to host those on 2 consecutive or 2 evenings in 1 week, doing a meeting at like 5 o'clock, by example, and another one at 6:30. So back to back. That was what we're looking at.
All right.
And right, so if we could get just 2 or 3 of you, if you're interested in attending, keep it down to just below a quorum, then we won't get in any trouble with noticing.
Okay.
Okay.
That works. Thank you.
But talk them up among your friends as well, and neighbors, and
Yeah, we
other
are.
interested parties.
Yeah. So we're going to do promotion around all of this, some flyers, social media stuff on the websites. We're going to use our survey as well. Last question, the survey will promote the June 9th workshop. So we'll be doing our part to get the word out, but to the extent that you can beat the drum and get your friends and neighbors to come out for these, it would be very helpful.
Okay, great. Thank
So
you.
the very next steps is to launch the online survey, start preparing for the workshop, and coordinate and prepare for those thematic meetings. And we have our ongoing work already. I've talked about our May meet, our now 2nd May meeting will be a discussion of facility and services. And then that covers all of our topic areas. We've done our homework on all the topic areas. So in subsequent meetings, we're going to start to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to take a look at the input that we've received from the survey and from the workshops, thematic meetings, and understand what people are telling us, and start to really identify what our big priorities are for the plan. Okay,
Sounds like a game plan.
good. And this is a very similar process that we followed, although far more condensed and a lot narrower because it was one topic, but the similar process we followed for the affordable housing plan. A draft of that plan has now been available for about 3 weeks now, I think, on the town website and in a hard copy in the town clerk's office. And we will be taking that to public hearing on May 17th at town council meeting at 7 o'clock. So if you're interested in giving the town any more input on that plan or any input on that plan, it's available now. You can send in comment to probably send your comment right to Maureen, and she could get that to council, I imagine. And you could show up at that hearing as well to share your opinion. We feel like it's a very thorough, well-documented plan. It is, I could tell you, it's far more robust than most of the plans you'll see across Connecticut that are being filed right now. There's a lot of homework that went into this. I think it's very both ambitious and at the same time feasible, because it recommends things that you can do, you have been doing, and things that I think are ultimately beneficial, will be beneficial for the community.
Just to say that, again, you've had the overlap meeting with the plan, with the committee. The plan is very similar to what you saw then, but certainly you can take a look at it. But in terms of comments, if you have any comments, yes, let us know as soon as possible. I mean, our intention, our hope is that the council is going to approve the plan on the 17th, because if they don't approve the plan on the 17th, they're going to have a special meeting before June 1st, because the plan is due to the state June 1st. So let us know what if you have any big issues, let us know sooner rather than later, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jim, for reminding them that we're under a deadline here, and we'd rather not take it back to the starting blocks. Sorry if I opened it up a little too much.
Oh, that's all right. That's okay.
All right. So our schedule, hey, we're about halfway through this process, believe it or not. And as you can see, based on where we're at, we're getting towards the end of our existing conditions assessment, which means we need to start shaping all this work into the actual plan recommendations and document. And we're right at the beginning, or just about to start our community engagement process. And yes, this chart has changed a little over time in response to the realities of our schedule. And so to answer your question about when is the next meeting, this is the date of our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is the fourth Thursday of the month. And that is Thursday, May 26th at 6 p.m.
Okay, I'm putting that on my calendar.
See you on the 30th.
Yep.
Not the 30th. No,
No, not the 30th.
no,
Too soon.
no.
All right.
Let's have that just be a one. Let's have this evening be a one-off.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. Well, it sounds good to me. Anyone else have any questions or comments before we adjourn?
Enjoy your night.
Huh?
Enjoy your night.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, everyone.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Do we have a second?
Also,
All right. And that
Hey,
was,
Steve.
yeah, Steve. It's in there. Any, all right, so all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
And it's 8:28 p.m. for the record. All right, thank you, and everyone have a nice night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thanks for
Good
being here.
night. Thank you.
For any of you that are in the room, Fran, I think left your packages for the meeting.
yes, we found them. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. For the rest of you, I will do my best to figure out how you're gonna get them. And or if any of you have the possibility of stopping by town hall, let me or Fran know. I probably won't be in till at least Wednesday, if not Thursday. That's when I've hit the 10, 11 days. So,
Okay, I'll be in tomorrow. I'll pick it up from Fran.
Okay.
Not that big a deal.
all right,
I'll try to make it a point to get it, Maureen.
all right, I'll let Fran know, but at the same time, we'll try to figure something else out. Chris might do it. Somebody else may do it for me.
I can do
Okay.
it too as well if you need a hand.
Thank you.
All right, bye for
Thanks.
now. Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, Francisco. Thank you
All right,
very
good night, guys.
much.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
thanks.
Francisco, for
Thanks for
doing
coming in.
this and everything
you're
you did.
welcome.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
I'm
no
so
trouble.
sorry I couldn't be there.
No, no trouble at all. I'm happy to do it. I hope you